Welcome to Money on Tap. Money on Tap, your personal finance headquarters, where we bring out the professionals' experience and some fun in what we call three-dimensional investing, utilizing insurance, brokerage, and fee-based planning. That's what we do on this show. We look at all sides of the issues, and we bring a fully independent planning perspective to the table.
Welcome back. You're listening to Money on Tap. My name's Seth Crossman here with Ben Brayshaw, Dan Mickelin. How are you guys today?
I'm excited. I actually really am. I'm excited for the show. I think this is what sets us apart from a lot of people out there, and I think that this show is going to bring a lot of value for people. And I'm really excited to provide that for people. That's where I'm at. Our listeners, this is the core of it. How about you, Dan?
I agree. I think it's timely. It's it's good because it's kind of what we focus our practice around is tax law, tax rules, how tax affect your planning. And it's tax season, right? So this is prime time, and not to mention, one of the articles we're going to dive into here in a minute is kind of hanging on a cliff right now as to which way it's going to go as we speak. And again, they have a major impact for how people file here between now and April. So, or even if you've already filed. So there's a lot of relevant information. I think a lot of important information, and this is just the right time of year to get into it.
How are you doing, Seth?
I'm doing well. I can't wait to actually let people know that they can get a hold of us at 855-226-8551 or info@yourmoneyontap.com. Also, I'll just want to get this out there in the beginning of a show because a lot of people ask us, hey, we love what you're doing. How can we support you? And you can, believe it or not, you can just go to, Apple Podcasts, Spotify, iHeartRadio, wherever it is that you listen to us on those platforms. Leave us a review. Just let us know what you think about the show or this episode. What Ben's wearing today. If you happen to know what he is wearing today. All kidding aside, we just thank you so much for being willing to get out there and support us in the podcast and help us grow Money on Tap. It's a lot of fun. We love bringing you the content. We love bringing you the enthusiasm around your personal finances and financial planning. And, as we work through the concepts that we're going to be in today, it's going to be fun. It's going to really open up some opportunities for you to think a little differently about how money works in your life and what are the opportunities that you have right now in this season. And that's, really what the show's about is not missing out. Don't miss out because change is constant, and being ahead of it or being a part of it really instead of reactionary is part of what planning's about. And this could pertain to business. This could pertain to, how you're working through your personal finances. The pleasure of it all is that we're in it. We get to participate with you and make some real difference here. And what these numbers come out to and how the numbers work. And actually, I just want to say that's one of my favorite tax people said, it's just numbers. You start getting all hot and bothered about what your taxes look like this year and what are you going to do about it? It's just numbers. We're just putting numbers in the board and we're working it out.
For everybody who's listening, the movement of the tax code is too daunting for most people to even try to compile all the data facts and the things that are changing. And I think today we're going to try to break down some really simple things to really magnify both retirement and, aggressive kind of planning for how to make retirement successful, because there's a lot of people who are missing out and struggling with how they're going to actually going to retire. And there's too many multiples that could interfere in a successful, healthy retirement. And dealing and addressing those and making some kind of very intentional decisions that involve planning, make your decisions really unwavering around lots of big changes. Like it has to be like a crippling event or something like that. Like planning really takes into account all of the possibilities of negativity that you could possibly think of. And hopefully you've covered all of those so that you come out on a better side, knowing like, hey, this is my worst case scenario. And that's the piece that real planning and real foresight helps you accomplish as you're trying to address retirement. And that's really what our goal is to help people have an unwavering approach when they actually do their plans to, the kind of the moving of the world around them.
Well said. And with that, it is time for Money in the News.
Coming to us today from CNN, Elizabeth Buchwald. Where was most of America's stuff imported from last year? Hint, it's not China. Now, this I thought was interesting right off the bat because I had presumed, and it has been the case that for probably decades going back, we did most of our import business as a country with goods coming in from China. I think we've all gotten very used to seeing the Made in China label on just about everything that we get coming in. So this I thought was breathtaking on a couple levels. One, just the simple fact, again, that the kind of Made in China tag, you just presumed that was our leading import partner. Geopolitically speaking, I'm glad to see that, we're doing business with a country who, isn't out there trying to kind of work against us on so many levels across the globe. Not that Mexico's always a friendly neighbor, but, for sure, they're not competing for that kind of global dominance in the same way that China is with us here in America. And so for last year, for the first time, there was a 5% increase up to $475.6 billion worth of goods imported from Mexico, which is really incredible. And inversely, we imported $427.2 billion worth of goods from China last year, which is a 20% decline from the year before. So, all things considered, I think I'm happy with a new trade partner and that continued kind of change of where we're doing business globally.
Yeah, I could not be happier to see this as well. One of the big eye-openers that we got from the pandemic, if you all remember what that was all about, was everything that we were getting here was from China. And when we experienced that and came to the understanding that they really do hold the keys to not our existence, we can be self-supporting, but we're not, right? Because we've moved all of those industries overseas. So now no longer do we have the capacity to be self-supporting. We needed new trade partners was one of the biggest things that came eye-opening to us. And I'd like to actually see some of this kind of reflected in where we're getting semiconductors for one, Taiwan. My big challenge with that is, everything has a positive and negative. My big challenge with that is the possible inevitability. That's a very strange way the possible inevitability of China invading Taiwan. If we don't hold enough interest there to protect Taiwan, that might just be the result where if we actually move those semiconductor industries out of Taiwan, we wouldn't be there to protect them. And I think that's an interest that the world needs to have, not just the U.S., but how that works. So anyways, with all that being said, I was really glad to see this trend taking place. I think there's a lot of other places that we can start to do business with. And, we're a model of diversification. Who would have thought? Diversify where you're getting your goods and services from. Spread it around.
There's a lot of things coming in from Mexico, goods and services just being one of those. So I'll leave it at that. But I think, Seth, you make a great point about Taiwan, because if China does take over Taiwan, we import about $100 billion from Taiwan, which, would put this as, if China takes them over and so forth, would obviously make China our number one importer again. But there's a ton here that, is good, and there's a ton that troubles me, because I do think that there's so much that we are too interdependent on other countries. And if any, type of trade relation goes south, we become very vulnerable very quickly. And I think this is in response to that. But I'm still not sure I want to put all my eggs in China and Mexico's basket. I mean, that's kind of like, I think about them being our two largest importers, and I'm saying to myself, man, is that really where I want to be as a country? And, at what point in time certain goods and services, even the chip manufacturing, I'm glad our government has made and created some opportunity around chip manufacturing in the U.S., because that is literally, we would be paralyzed without that. And I think that's just the beginning of addressing those issues. But it's a great article, Dan. I actually was reading this morning, and I was actually so kind of shocked by the fact that we import more from Mexico than China that I actually brought my wife in and said, I'm reading this article. I just cannot believe that these are really the facts on that. But it's pretty crazy, and I'm sure a lot of our listeners would be surprised by that too.
It's totally sidebar, but I read another article. One of my biggest concerns with our dependency on China was this rare earth minerals problem that we have. They controlled just the vast quantity of what's available on the globe, and we need this stuff to build all those chips and all of the stuff that goes into our defense industry. So long term, I was always concerned in reading that they really kind of got us because, it's not a question of can we manufacture it here? Of course we can, but there's no materials available to even begin the manufacturing process. But they did just discover somewhere here in the U.S. in the Midwest, out of Wyoming, Montana, somewhere up there, Utah, just a massive, massive field of these minerals that actually dwarfs what's available in China. So I think, totally offshoot here, but having heard that, made me feel a whole lot secure about our future as a country and our ability to develop these defense materials that everybody wants and all the chips. So good news there that we actually have everything we need. Now it's a question of mining it and doing that with EPA protections and all those things considered. But the fact of the matter that it's here I think is just a massive advantage for us.
Agreed.
Well,
Agreed.
That is great, and it might not have slave labor or child labor to pull those resources out of the earth, which would make me feel better. Oh, my gosh. Hey, Ackerman launches a cheaper hedge fund aimed at wider investor pool. Svi Herbst Bayless. Thank you very much, Yahoo Finance and Svi Herbst Bayless, for bringing us this article where billionaire hedge fund manager William Ackerman is launching new investment portfolio in the U.S. according to regulatory filing, which suggests the fund will mimic his existing hedge fund, but also offering lower fees and quicker access to capital. Here's the article in a nutshell. Hedge fund turned into a closed-end fund with a 2% fee every year after the first year, and it has liquidity, which means you can get out of it much quicker than the process is maybe a year or two to get out of the other hedge fund. With all of that, it's pretty fascinating to see. I've got some statistics lined up behind this to just help you kind of think through what this could be. But with that, that's it in a nutshell. It was really interesting to see that this is what's going to happen in terms of the marketplace.
Yeah, I think hedge funds is something in the investing world that we get asked about it periodically. Not too much, but it certainly comes up because it's always for the kind of average retail investor been something that you hear about. You get this perception that's where all the real money is, and the big players are in these things. And how do we get access to it? And the fact of the matter is, you can't. You have to be a qualified investor on a very, very large scale to get funds into these things. And just how the fees work, where they're typically taking 20% of the profit off the top. And like you said, Seth, it takes a long time to get in and out of these things. They really would be not a great tool for someone who's living in and out of a portfolio or trying to produce income. For most of your kind of typical applications of an investment product, for a retail investor, hedge funds really just not really need to be. But the idea of structuring a product that is more liquid, that is exchange traded, that does offer some of these kind of performance opportunities, I think it's big news. I'm excited to hear this. I mean, his fund itself, the true hedge fund version of it, has a 5-year average return of 31%, which is substantial. To create the opportunity for kind of mom and pop investors to get into something like this and to kind of dip your toe into those waters, I think it's pretty exciting. It's just another option to have.
Well, a lot of these pension companies couldn't even get involved because they couldn't write a check big enough to invest with them. So, this is kind of a response to that. But, 2% fees, kind of hefty, but at the same time, it's not a performance-based fee. So that's kind of interesting. I mean, I thought the whole thing was pretty interesting. I'm curious what kind of information, you're looking at a 4 to 5% fee, on a traditional kind of hedge fund, the 15 to 30%, charge on the performance. So how many people actually leave his traditional fund? How much information kind of withers down into the easier, less expensive, fund fee? You know what I mean? Like, what proprietary knowledge is he really going to push into the other fund? Because it does have more liquidity. There's a lot of questions I have. Like, it's not going to be the same. So what is it? That's my big question leaving the thing. But it is very interesting, and I think there's a lot of people who'll be taking advantage of that for sure.
One of the things I wanted to highlight here is that, according to a Capco study, 50% of hedge funds shut down because of operational failures. Hedge fund closures are around 38% because of issues with the investments. And, oh gosh, what was the average life expectancy of a hedge fund is around 5 years or less. So statistically, they are I mean, as much as they might sound like, really exciting because it's what people that have means can invest in, like the accredited investor or the pension funds and some of those, larger scale investments. But it doesn't necessarily mean success. And I think that's the thing that I really want people to understand around this is, interesting. It's interesting that this is coming to the marketplace where the average investor can invest. And it could very well be a success story once it's, once the closed-end fund fills up, then it just is publicly traded. So caution, because, past success does not equal, future returns, all that kind of stuff that we talk about. But it's a fun topic for us to just have an opportunity to share with you.
Well said, Seth. Last article, salt tax cap could get a revamp, meaning millions get a bigger tax refund this year. Now, this is from Fox Business, and Megan Henney put this article together, and I think this is important because change is always happening. We talk about this all the time. But if you're filed your taxes, or going to file your taxes, this is a retroactive tax benefit that could be coming for us. And that has to do with the SALT tax. And the SALT is the state and local taxes that you get to deduct. And currently, right now, it's a $10,000 deduction that you cap out on against your SALT tax deductions. And for people like, especially in New Hampshire has some very, very high, property taxes that, can get well over $10,000 in New Hampshire because we don't have the income taxes. And so that is a big piece of that. And so, this is obviously part of Donald Trump's previous tax law. And the goal, or the assumed goal, was that this was going to attack a lot of the blue states, and it does. It really does impact people in California and New York significantly more. But in reality, this would take from $10,000 deduction up to $20,000 of a deduction, and this is for married filing jointly up to $500,000. So this could be a significant deduction. And if you're married filing jointly, you're making $500,000, this is going to save you $2,000 to $3,000 or more in taxes. I mean, literally money coming back to you in taxes. So this is kind of a big deal and something you want to kind of, listen for, because this change sounds like it's moving forward, but it hasn't been passed yet. And that might mean, hey, listen, wait till April 15th to file your taxes. Give yourself some time to see if this thing happens so you're not paying someone the cost to refile your taxes. But this would be a big deal for a lot of people.
Yeah, it's one of those taxes that, one of the issues before Congress right now relative to it, you hit on it there, Ben, but just to kind of exhaust this point or get it out there, they say this is a tax that has a marriage penalty built into it. Because as it stands right now, the deduction you can take for the SALT taxes is the same whether you're married in filing jointly or a single tax filer. So, obviously for married couples, typically you can double any of these benefits because there's two filers involved, two incomes. But in this case, there isn't, and that's one of the things they're trying to push forward here is to double that deduction from $10,000 to $20,000. And this whole deduction, the whole SALT tax deduction, set to expire in 2026 anyway. So legislation's trying to enact rules to push this forward and have it be on the books long term for us.
That's going to do it for Money in the News. You can reach us at 855-226-8551 or info@yourmoneyontap.com. Hey, I did fail to mention when I was talking about going and subscribing to the podcast and leaving us a review. We appreciate those of you who are helping us out in that way. Because you're doing that, we want to hear from you and send you out some Money on Tap gear. So please, when you do that, just send us an email at info@yourmoneyontap.com. Let us know. Hey, wrote you a review. Say whatever you want to say to Ben, Dan, and myself. And also make sure that you leave us somewhere that we can send you the Money on Tap gear. An address would be helpful is what I'm trying to say. And with that, we'll get you out some fresh Money on Tap drip and having some fun with that, you guys. It's a lot of fun to be doing this show here today and to be with you. And with that, we need to take a quick break. We'll be right back with Don't Miss Out, because change is constant.
Are you looking for professional guidance to kickstart your investing journey? Look no further. Brayshaw Financial Group and our planners are here to help. Our team of experts will provide personalized advice tailored to your financial goals. Visit BrayshawFinancial.com today to schedule your free consultation. Brayshaw Financial, investing made easy.
We appreciate you listening to Money on Tap with Ben, Seth, and Dan. You can contact us at 855-226-8551 or email us at info@yourmoneyontap.com. And now, more of this week's program.
Welcome back. You're listening to Money on Tap, and you can reach us at 855-226-8551 or info@yourmoneyontap.com. So we're getting into it today with Don't Miss Out, Change is Constant, and we really haven't revealed much around what that topic is going to have in store for you. But as we told you, we're excited. So you know it's going to be good. When a couple financial planners get excited about talking about what we do, well, it's going to be the good stuff. Yeah, it's just no way around it. This is going to be fun. So what are we going to be, what's behind door number one? Well, it's about the tax code, and it's about what you have an opportunity inside of this tax code, and we're going to get into the history of this for you to just kind of really give you the perspective, that 30,000 foot view of where you're at today, why, and probably what's going to be happening in the future here for you. So why you really want to pay attention, and maybe you want to make some changes. And if it's not this year, maybe in the next 5 years, you need to start really putting your head into this and trying to figure out how you're going to take advantage of what you have an opportunity of now. That's the don't miss out part. And the change is constant is because, you know what? This is probably not going to stick around. So with that, Ben.
Seth, I hope that we didn't just lose every follower, listener at
Was it that bad?
Moment. At one moment when you said, hey, we're going to talk about something exciting, the tax code.
The tax code.
I mean, I can't even imagine how that our listeners have. Hey, listen, the tax code is something that we all have to live in. So we're going to break this down and be super simple. And we really just want to give you some perspective and then give you the ability to launch off of that perspective to really create some sort of opportunity around what you can do. That's the piece that I think a lot of people are not really able to quantify into their financials. See, what a lot of people don't realize is and there's probably not a person listening that doesn't say or think, boy, I'm paying a ton in taxes. I mean, does anyone, if any of our listeners think they're not paying enough taxes, I just like to get an email from them saying, I don't pay enough in taxes, because there's not a person I meet that doesn't say, I really wish I could get my taxes down. The thing is our top tax bracket is 37.6%. That's today. Okay. So 37.6%, if you're making all the money in the world, that's your federal tax bracket. Do you guys realize, our listeners, do you realize that back in the 1950s that the top tax bracket was 91%? 91%. It's almost unbelievable. Like, I would encourage our listeners, just go Google historical income tax rates, go to images, and you'll see 1,000 of them. And it's literally hard to believe that, like, at the World War II's end, it was actually 94%. That was the peak. That meant if you made, $100 and you were in the top tax bracket, you only got to keep $6. And in the 1950s, you got to keep $9. It was actually historically high, the highest ever. And so there was lots of different things that wealthy people were trying to do, from all sorts of investments to crashing companies to creating losses across the board. There was all sorts of things. But then, back when Reagan was president, back in the 80s, the tax rate was 69%. And he was, everyone was happy with Reagan. I mean, hey, he lowered the tax bracket to 69%. I mean, that's over 30% more than we're paying today in our top tax bracket. And he was a hero. And we go back in that. But, what basically has gone on during our world is our government has been releasing various forms of ways to retire and to create tax incentive opportunities around the income you make. So for instance, In 1974, when tax brackets were around 70%, the IRS, they enacted the ERISA, which allowed you to create an IRA. It's a wonderful thing. You could put money in. You don't have to pay taxes on it now, and you could defer it to someday when, guess what, you're in a lower tax bracket. Super simple concept, wonderful thing. Lots of people didn't take advantage of it because no one knew what they were talking about. It was brand new. And then in 1978, that's when the 401k world began. Okay? Still great. No one knew about it. Very few people did it. And they were dropping pensions as fast as they possibly could because corporations realized they could not manage the stock market. And so, but while this is going on, right, we see this high tax bracket and people are putting money away, and we get into basically moving forward, we start dropping tax rates back into the lower echelon of the 40% range, and we start what we call the Roth IRA. I think it was 1996. And we start the Roth IRA, and it allows people to put money into a retirement investment, but it was after tax. And people were saying, well, hey, listen, taxes are so low. They're less than half of what they used to be only 40 years ago. We should put this money, we should pay the taxes and put it in there. And it took a long time for the Roth program to actually become something that was more common knowledge. It's been a long time. I still, to this day, have to explain what a Roth IRA is to a lot of people and how it works. And a lot of people will say, hey, I know exactly how that works, but they also don't know the value of it, and they don't know the value of how to create tax-free income. And so what ended up happening was our government then enacted the ability to do Roth conversions. So they said, hey, we're in a low tax bracket. Let's allow Roth conversions. Those Roth conversions will be for people who make under $100,000 a year, and they'll be able to take their IRAs, which are trapped dollars at these low tax brackets, and convert them to an after-tax event. Tax rates continue to go down, and in 2010, you're actually allowed to convert your Roth IRA. They remove the income limits and allow you to spread it out over a few years. Now we're actually dealing with the fact that we just went through COVID. We printed $14 trillion, and we're staring at a massive increase in taxes that is going to happen over the next 5 or 10 years, no matter what we want to do if we don't want to bankrupt this country, because we have to pay these bills. And I think we'd be foolish to say, hey, listen, these tax rates are something that we're not going to worry about because, we're just going to print more money and, sell more bonds, and people are going to continue buying them, and then we'll just pay the interest on it, which a lot of economists want you to do. The truth is that there is a time limit to when Roth conversion makes sense, because a lot of people say, well, those are the top tax brackets, Ben. Well, in the 1950s, if you made the equivalent of $150,000 in today's money, you were in a 50% tax bracket. A 50% tax bracket. I mean, that's 22 or 24% as a tax bracket in today's same dollars. That's less than half of what you would be paying in taxes if we were back there. So
you're saying, Ben, you're saying that like in 1950, right? Is that 1950, 1955?
Yeah, that range. Exactly.
Okay. But if you were making, what, 50, 60,000?
If you were making $150,000 equivalent in today's dollars,
which was roughly around 50, 60,000, if I'm not mistaken. Is that what that math works out to be? I'm pretty sure it was like 60,000. So if you're like in 1955, made $60,000.
It's actually $16,000.
That's what I thought I saw. 16.
What? $16,000 in 1955?
Yep. We were paying a 50% bracket.
But that's the equivalent today of around $150,000.
Correct.
Yeah, and $150,000 today is a 22 or 24% bracket. Wow. It's absolutely remarkable. I mean, it's literally incredible that our tax rates are as low as they are, and people don't realize it. There's lots of people that are only in the 10 and 12% bracket. It's crazy low.
Mm-hmm.
So our show today, and the reason I wanted to dig through this history was there's a clock ticking. And the clock isn't ticking that, our government's going to get rid of a Roth IRA. The clock's ticking on how long are these tax rates going to remain for you to make the best investment decisions you possibly can make addressing the tax code as low as it is. Because right now, all that money you're putting into IRAs and 401ks that are not Roth, you're just delaying probably to another day when you're in retirement where your tax rates are higher and you're taking that money out in a higher tax bracket. And we want to talk to you guys about combating taxes during retirement, which is going to be the biggest unforeseen question mark moving forward.
Yeah, we'll see people a lot. They come in with their 401k statements and IRA statements, and we start to talk about building a plan, and they'll say whatever the number is. Well, this is what I have in my 401k, so this should be enough to produce retirement income. And we have to often remind people, hey, listen, Uncle Sam is not taking his piece of the pie, and he is at the table. So that number that you're looking at, make sure that you're prepared to take a substantial portion of that and knock it off the top, because taxes will be due. And totally kind of offshoot, but it's something I read about proposed legislation out there, and similar to the SALT tax, you got to keep your eyes open to this stuff. Is some economists is coming up with the notion that if they were to remove the deducted benefit on 401k and IRA contributions as it stands today, if we were to do away with that entirely, it would solve 75% of our Social Security problem. It would bridge the gap or the shortfall that we expect going forward after 2034 by 75%. So although this is far from law, and this is just the beginnings of proposed legislation.
No, say that again, man. Say that again, Dan. That's a really
if you don't think this is catching senators' ears and congressmen's ears, if we were to remove the deduction that people take for making contributions into the 401k and IRA, just do away with it. Essentially make everything Roth, right, in the retirement world.
So every dollar is taxed, basically.
Every dollar is taxed. Cannot set it aside for any kind of present-day benefit. Maybe a rear-end benefit like we're talking about with how Roths work. But that simple change, quote-unquote simple change, would cover the gap of 75% of our expected shortfall in the Social Security program.
What's really incredible is that's like pre-1974 tax code.
With a 91% top marginal bracket. Right.
Yeah, exactly. And I think what people aren't realizing is that, Dan, that's only 75% of the problem. That doesn't take care of the rest of the problem, which is the tax code increase. I mean, we have wealthy people walk in our office every day and say, I'll pay 37.6% because one day I'm going to be paying 50% or 60%, and converting today even a portion of it and nibbling it off is much better than being burdened by whatever our Congress decides the tax code is going to be in our future. Because people don't want to live with that. I don't want to live with that. People want some level of clarity on retirement, and tax codes are the biggest uncertain right now in history. And people don't realize we're at the lowest tax brackets pretty much in history right now, and there's not one person walking through the door saying, I pay too little in taxes. And it's literally a burden that no one realizes, and it's going to be like hitting a brick wall in retirement for a lot of people when that day happens.
You're listening to Money on Tap. You can reach us at 855-226-8551 or info@yourmoneyontap.com. We're talking about don't miss out. Change is constant. And we're going to get into some techniques and some tactics for you of what you can be doing now and in the future to take advantage of the tax code, where it's at today. So with that, don't go anywhere. We'll be right back. You're listening to Money on Tap. Hey guys, Seth Cressman with Brayshaw Financial Group. Are you ready to take control of your financial future? Look no further than Brayshaw Financial Group. Our team of experienced advisors is dedicated to helping beginners like you build wealth through smart investing strategies. Visit BrayshawFinancial.com today and start your journey towards financial independence. Brayshaw Financial Group, your partner in wealth creation.
You can reach us at 855-226-8551 or email us at info@yourmoneyontap.com. And now, more Money on Tap with Ben, Seth, and Dan.
Welcome back. You're listening to Money on Tap. You can reach us at 855-226-8551 or info@yourmoneyontap.com. And we are talking about, the stuff you don't want to miss out on, because the change is constant. And that's change in the market. That's change in the tax code. That's what we're talking about today. And, a lot of the time when we sit down and we're meeting with people for the first time, there's some concepts that we really, we're so used to working in and what we do that we want to take a step back and just have some understanding around. And I'll say this is very common, so don't feel like you're supposed to know this stuff, really. I think that's one of the important things to realize is that you're wherever you're at, you're at. What we want to try to make sure that we're doing is giving you information in a way that empowers you to get where you need to go. So, for instance, let's say, you're asking about an IRA. And you're like, hey, or a Roth IRA. Those are kind of the things that we're talking about for the most part today. 401k, Roth IRA, Roth 401k, IRA. So an IRA is really just the tax code. That's what it is. And 401k, it's a tax code. Roth IRA, it's tax code. And what that does is when we say we open up an account and you open up a Roth IRA, that's got a wrapper around it of tax code that has these little, all the tax code that's included around that. So inside of that, your investments are completely separate from whatever that tax code is. And there are things that we would say, they're more appropriate for that tax code or not appropriate for this tax code because of how they work. But, your Roth IRA is not necessarily something that's going to give you some performance. And that's one of the things we do find a lot of people doing is they have a 401k, or a simple IRA, and they're making contributions, but they really have never invested it because they just thought that the IRA or the Roth IRA was doing the investing for them, and it was supposed to accomplish their goals because that was their understanding of it. And so separating that concept, first of all, I want to make sure everybody has an understanding around that. When you have an IRA, Roth IRA, it's not going to dictate what the investment is or any kind of performance. You're going to want to make sure you have an understanding or you're working with somebody to put inside of that the investments. Okay? Pretty simple. We're going to start out from there with that. And now that you kind of have some history and now that you maybe know a little bit about, how or what those things are, let's take a little another step forward, okay? Roth IRA. So how does that work? Well, you get paid or you pay yourself, however your employment's working these days, or your money's coming through. And from that, you can pay taxes on it, okay, and then put it into a Roth IRA. And then that Roth IRA, now, first of all, let's pay attention here because you're going to pay taxes, then put it into a Roth IRA. The Roth IRA is going to grow tax-free, and then the distribution off that Roth IRA is going to be tax-free. Boom. That's cool, right? The part about that some people don't care for is I don't want to pay taxes on that money because maybe their income's at a level or has grown to a level that they're like, hey, I need to try to see if I can save some money. Well, guess what? That's the IRA. You go ahead and you take that money that you've received for income, you put it into the IRA. Now you get a deduction, right, for whatever the contribution limit is for you, okay? And what do I mean by that? Well, the tax code, remember, we're working from the tax code. If you're under 50, then that's going to be $6,500 that you can put in 2023. And over 50, $7,500. So that money becomes deductible from your taxes. Then once it's inside, it grows tax-free, and then the distribution is taxable. So two different things there.
Seth, as you're talking about this, it's like, and the whole reason, if you're just joining us too, and you're just kind of getting in, we're talking about how tax rates are probably going to go up. And I meet a lot of people who say, I talk to my CPA or the person who files my taxes, and that person thinks they're doing these people a huge service by saving them a few $100s in taxes by having them put their money into an IRA or a 401k. Now, there's no question. We're never going to say don't put money into a 401k where you have a match and there's no Roth option. We're going to tell you, hey, listen, get that free match. That's free money. We're never going to say, hey, don't do that. But what I get frustrated with is people find value in how much money they're saving them today. But the truth is, it's how much money you get to keep over your lifetime. And if you can get out of the kind of the singular look, the individual today value piece and say, a few $100s in savings in my taxes today into an IRA is just a penny in the bucket of what I'm going to need in retirement that I could put into a Roth today where my tax rates, even if they're 22%, I hear CPAs be like, well, you hit 22, 24%, you definitely put money into an IRA. Well, none of them have looked at the history of the tax code in a way that says, boy, the same person who's paying 22 or 24% today would be paying 50%, 60, 70 years ago in that same bracket. And that's what's being missed inside the tax advice. That's why we actually brought people into our office to do taxes. So if you need taxes done, give us a call, because we want people to look at your taxes from a planning perspective. And that's why we've created this resource to allow people to get more competent, more capable, more educated planning perspective taxes done in an office. That doesn't take you, here, let's save you a few $100 or $1,000 in taxes, when in reality, they could be costing you tens of thousands of dollars taxes 20 or 30 years from now.
And for people who are considering, making those contributions, there's a couple limits at play. And Seth, you talked about the amount somebody can contribute, but there's also an income limitation. So not everybody's eligible to make a contribution outright. This is very important to keep in mind. For 2024 upcoming, if you're a single filer at $146,000 of income, you begin to phase out of being able to make Roth contributions. And at $161,000, you're completely out. So between 146 and 161, you can make some level of contribution, but not the full one. And if you're filing jointly, a married couple, that same difference applies, but the first end of the phase out starts at $230,000 filed jointly, all the way through to $240,000. But after that point, you're not eligible to make any Roth contribution at all. So if you want to begin a Roth account and you're beyond those income limitations, you do still have options, though. And that's something called a conversion. And we're going to dive into some strategies here in a moment. But I think it's important particularly for young people who are kind of just getting into the retirement world, maybe for the first time have access to a 401k, or haven't been fully kind of maximizing the potential there as, earnings are low, you're just starting a career. But there could never be a better time to start building that Roth account than today. Because the longer you're able to keep that money in the market, all of that tax-free growth leading to future tax-free income is working for you. So this is absolutely a huge advantage where time comes into play. Right? And if you're below those income limits, you're a younger worker just starting out, definitely pay a lot of attention to this show here and get those Roth accounts opened up.
All right, we're going to take a quick break. You're listening to Money on Tap. You can reach us at 855-226-8551 or info@yourmoneyontap.com. We'll be getting into some strategies when we come back on this. Don't miss out. Change is constant.
Hey everyone, Dan Mickelon here with Brayshaw Financial. Looking for a hassle-free way to invest? Look no further than Brayshaw Financial Group. With Brayshaw Financial Group, you can start investing with as little as $100, enjoy a user-friendly platform with a diverse range of investment options. Visit Brayshaw Financial Group and start your investment journey today. Brayshaw Financial Group, investing made easy.
We appreciate you listening to Money on Tap with Ben, Seth, and Dan. You can contact us at 855-226-8551 or email us at info@yourmoneyontap.com. And now, more of this week's program.
Welcome back. You're listening to Money on Tap. You can reach us at 855-226-8551 or info@yourmoneyontap.com. We're talking about don't miss out. Change is constant. And we wanted to take some time to really get into some strategies. We've covered some of the basics of the IRA and Roth and what those are. Now, one of the things that we have a lot of people that get later in life and they just haven't really done the Roth contributions, or they want more. So what are the opportunities for you? How can you take whatever you have in your 401k or your IRA and start to make some of these conversions or pour into your Roth? Now, these are taxable, right? So that's important to note. But there's some strategies around how to do this that can allow you to experience maybe you have some greater growth inside of your Roth. Talk about what that might look like, or maybe some periods of time or corridors that you might want to really focus on doing some of these things.
Yeah, one thing that we do often with people is we'll sit with them and we'll put up on the screen here the present tax brackets, right? And we'll say, okay, well, you're estimated to come in at this level of income this year, and between where you're at for income and until you get to the next tax bracket, let's say there's a $20,000 gap there. We'll say, well, for year one, to start this conversion program for yourselves, let's convert everything we can up to that limit. So we're not going to intentionally push you into a new tax bracket, but whatever the gap is between your present income level and the top end of the bracket that you're already in, that's a good number to start for a conversion for this year. And then do that subsequently each year as we go on. So, and even if you do go over by a little bit, be some unexpected income, that potentially, a lot of people are between 22 and 24%. So you're only going to get that 2% difference on those extra dollars. But not to create an undue tax burden, that's a strategy that we employ all the time. See where you're at for income, see what the next tax tier is, what the next bracket up is, and convert that amount from your IRA to your Roth.
Yeah, and I think that's where, Dan, we keep talking about, it's like you got to understand that the tax brackets are low. And if for some reason they go lower, convert more. We talk about layering conversions and doing this year over year over year and evaluating that on a regular basis to say, hey, between the 22 and the 24% bracket, I got this much room to go, and we do that. The other thing that we try to do is during the year, we try to layer in what type of things to convert. I mean, I personally did a conversion a few years ago, and Dan actually reminded me of it. I actually took some Apple stock I had. Apple pulled back horrifically, and it just saw a massive, massive decline. And I just turned around and I just converted it to a Roth. And then, over the next year or so, Apple just started to, rise right up. So you can actually take a specific security and convert it in place, and it goes from being Apple in your IRA to Apple in your Roth IRA. And no buying or selling actually has to occur. So, and you can do that with things like, for instance, a lot of people own the S&P 500. I mean, you could take that ETF or whatever mutual fund you have or whatever. You could actually just convert that in place. They move it to another account, but there's no buying or selling, but you pay the taxes based on the value on the day of conversion. So it's kind of timing the market, but as long as you're good with the fact that you're going to convert, if there's an opportunity to get a little lower stock price or fund price when you're saying, hey, I'm in this for the long haul, I'm going to own the S&P 500 on some level for, infinity or something like that. You say, hey, this is a pullback session. I'm going to take advantage of that.
If you're just in an S&P fund, just a super simple example, and you converted at the end of 22, the market rallied in 23 and essentially would have covered your taxes for you, right? Just because of the way the market played out. So if you're at the tail end of a down year and you're considering this type of program, that's a great time to do it. Just keep the same holdings, hope they recover, and that's going to offset whatever your cost was for doing so.
And I would just leave this for our listeners, as we're kind of getting ready to close out the show. There are a number of different rules that have to be involved, like the 5-year rule. Call us, and we could talk to you about the pros and cons and the ins and outs of getting at money and how this all works inside the Roth. But you do have to pay the taxes on a conversion out of pocket. You can't use fund. That is the one big glitch. Like, the reason people don't do big conversions is because they have to write the check themselves right out of their own pocket to pay the taxes. And can be a hefty, difficult thing. So you got to plan ahead a little bit for it.
Yeah, I was going to say there's job changes a lot of the time, too. And those are places where people might be experiencing their partner's loss of income. Okay, and if it's not too much of a burden in the household, maybe considering taking that event that's lowered the income level as an opportunity to just think about, paying that money to yourself a little differently. You're still going to pay. It's like you're going to be paying the same amount of tax in the household if you do some kind of a conversion within those amounts. And again, this is trying to keep that. This is kind of a brain hack more than anything, as well as it is a little bit of an income hack. If you have that double income and you lose one, then you're just going to convert what you had in that income into the IRA. But you do have to have that money available again to pay those taxes up front. And, the other one is just kind of making sure maybe it's a part of an ongoing strategy. Maybe you have a really stable kind of an income environment. And so you're just doing things in increments. It's kind of a year over year. You know where things are going to be at. You're taking a look at where you're at in terms of your tax thresholds, and you're pouring a little over. And that's maybe not a big event. And maybe, it may be just, a couple $1,000s here or there. But those are things that you may want to consider and just trying to convert over into that tax-free income.
Yeah, Seth, as we're kind of going through this, there's so many different ways that, people have done this. And a lot of listeners are saying, man, I haven't done any of these conversions. I haven't done any Roth conversions, Roth contributions. We were going to talk about backdoor Roth, so I don't think we even have time to do that. But there's so many things that people say, I'm kind of missing the boat. And yeah, I know we printed $14 trillion in additional debt. And I know our national debt's like $35 trillion. And I agree with you, Ben. I agree with you, Seth and Dan. I think tax rates are going up over the next 5 or 10 years. And every time our government talks about normalizing taxes, I know that's a story of, how are we going to raise taxes on people and make them normal to deal with this Social Security problem that Dan had mentioned earlier. Ben, I understand all that, but what do I do now? Like, I feel like I'm missing the boat. Like, how do I catch up? And I make too much money to do a Roth contribution. There are ways out there. We call it a rich man's Roth, the super Roth story. And I know we're going to do a show on that in the coming future here. But for people who know that, hey, the tax code is just a matter of a vote away from a large change or a major overhaul, there are ways to do now to get large sums of money into insurance vehicles that actually literally will help you draw a tax-free income. They call them rich man's Roths. They're buried in insurance. And they're another opportunity when done right and done well, they can be super strong planning tools. Now, I say all of this with a big, huge, you got to do this right. And the problem is there's only a few companies out there that you can really do this well with. And we work with a few of them. But, there's a lot of people who are out there selling life insurance under the auspices of financial planning. And honestly, it's really a crash and fail. And so you have to be really, really careful in this space. But it can be an opportunity to really kind of do the catch-up conversation around, tax-free income in retirement. And I don't want to leave that out of this conversation. But if you're a listener today and saying to yourself, hey, guys, I kind of feel like I missed the boat on converting. I definitely make too much money to do this. Like, there are opportunities, and we do this for wealthy and the C-suite kind of individuals all the time to create tax-free income and something to really drive the future for you.
So one other opportunity that I wanted to just talk about before we got to go here is when do you experience one of those great dips in your income? Like during the course of this planning event called retirement, it's when you retire. Usually it's like when we put it into the software and we look at all the numbers, it's like you see this like income shuts off and now there's nothing. And so it's one of the best opportunities that we see in terms of doing some converting. And this may not work if you have everything inside of a 401k or IRA, because that's where the income is going to start to come from, especially in an early retirement scenario. But if you have non-qualified funds set aside to kind of supplement that income, you'll see a tremendous opportunity within your income to take advantage of that window. And it's a very, very short one, because pretty soon those IRAs and 401ks start forcing income, and you lose this window. So that's one of the best things that we could say is really, really, when you're getting into this is important. This is a very critical corridor for people to make sure it's done well, make sure it's done right. The sooner that you can do the planning, that's the best time to step in and say, what can I do? Sooner rather than later. Take advantage of this opportunity, because it's not going to last forever. Nothing never does, right? That's time is our ally. Time is our adversary. But don't miss out, right? Do not miss out. You've been listening to Money on Tap. You can reach us at 855-226-8551 or info@yourmoneyontap.com. Be successful in your investing. We cannot wait to be here with you again. Until then, make it a great week.
The views expressed are not necessarily the opinion of this radio station and should not be construed directly or indirectly as an offer to buy or sell any securities mentioned herein. Investing is subject to risks, including loss of principal invested. No strategy, product, material, or tool mentioned can assure a profit nor protect against loss. Please note that individual situations can vary. Therefore, the information, products, materials, or tools mentioned should be relied upon when coordinated with individual professional advice. Past performance is not a guarantee of future results. This show may be subsidized in whole or in part by a product sponsor or issuer. Securities and advisory services offered through SagePoint Financial Incorporated, member FINRA SIPC, and a registered investment advisor. All other services offered through Brayshaw Financial Group LLC are independent of SagePoint Financial. SagePoint Financial and Brayshaw Financial Group do not provide tax or legal advice. Main office is located at 116 South River Road, Bedford, New Hampshire, 03110, and can be reached at toll-free 855-226-8551.
Well, bye.